Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
Yeah. So, I guess we can do housekeeping here too.
Yeah.
Um, a little housekeeping. We have the link to our website that Mary has crafted in our Instagram bio. Instagram is Housewife Did It Pod. There you can get to our YouTube, our Spotify, our Redbubble, other merch. You find everything you
hmm
need there. So, check it out.
There's also now a blog tab where you can read what we've written and see photos from each case. If you have trouble hearing, or you know someone who would want to hear our podcast but has trouble hearing, they can read it. Or if you, like me, have trouble listening and focusing, you can read it
You
instead.
missed a
And
detail.
you can see pictures, which we post pictures on our Instagram when the episodes are released, but you can see more photos on these blog posts.
Yeah. All right. Any thoughts before I jump into this one?
Um, I don't think so.
Okay. So, I will preface with this. I don't even want to say the word phenomenon, but there is this thing happening. It is not rare that women or young girls are giving birth
Mm-hmm.
and then disposing of their newborn's body. Um, Obviously, every situation is different, so some of these people are being charged with murder, but it is just interesting that this case has a lot of detail, and there are a lot out right now that don't yet have a lot of detail. There's a 19-year-old in New Mexico that they just
Mm-hmm.
found had put her baby in the garbage at a hospital after she gave birth in the bathroom alone. So some of these are still going to trial and going through things, but this is going to be one of those cases.
I also think it begs the question, like, are they scared
Mm-hmm.
of something? Like, why do they feel the need to do this? Is there a lack of acceptance because of their age, a lack of resources, um, a lack of fam family like care, or do they just not want to deal with it? And I think that it's probably different for every case, but I think that maybe that has something to do with why it has happened now more than once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to get into it then. We'll start with some background, but not a whole lot. Because the victim in this case, we don't have a whole lot of background on. Well, the alleged victim. In 2016, 17-year-old Brooke Skylar Richardson, known by her middle name Skylar, was a cheerleader at Carlisle High School in Carlisle, Ohio. She was just beginning her senior year, and in August of 2016, she began dating Trey Johnson. Reportedly, they had sex twice during their relationship. One of those times, the sex was unprotected. However, their relationship was short-lived and only lasted about a month. Given where the story goes, that is why their relationship is relevant. In January 2017, high school senior Skylar starts dating a junior named Brandon. In February, Skylar bought a beautiful, tight red dress for her senior prom that she planned to go to with her boyfriend Brandon. Leading up to her prom in May, however, Skylar was having some concerns about how she looked in her dress. According to texts between her and her mother, she did not like the way that her belly looked and wished at times that she had not chosen a tight-fitting dress. She had sent texts to her mom on different occasions leading up to prom, telling her once she had gone on a run and was feeling like her shorts were fitting looser afterwards. Her mom offered her praise for this, reminded her that this would help with her prom dress, and then tells Skylar she should probably just hit another round of sit-ups, just in case. In another In another text exchange on May 4th, the day before her senior prom, Skylar says that she, quote, bossed it up for 300 calories on the treadmill, and her mom replies, quote, you look amazing, and Skylar says, I feel amazing. So this gives us some insight into Skylar's frame of mind surrounding her body leading up to her prom. Now I'm going to take us back a few days to April 26th, 2017. Skylar was scheduled for a gynecologist appointment to get started on birth control. She was nervous about her first OBGYN appointment because it's scary. And especially about the fact that the doctor was a man. Her mother, Kim, it's a little...
They couldn't have found one that wasn't a man?
Well,
that scared her.
Her mother, Kim, reassured her that this was her own OBGYN. In fact, the one that had delivered Skylar and her brother. So she was like...
That doesn't make it less weird.
Yeah, right.
Well, he's known you since you came out of the womb.
Yeah, I think...
look at my vagina either way.
Yeah, I think she was trying to reassure her that he's a good doctor, although I do not think that was the concern.
Yeah.
Kim also told Skylar that since she is partaking in adult actions, she needs to be responsible, reminding her that if she were to get pregnant, it would mess up her plans for the future. Skylar did go to this appointment and was seen by Dr. William Andrew at Hilltop Obstetrics. She asked to be put on birth control. She told the doctor that her last period was about a month prior. She declined to undergo a gynecological exam, but was asked to provide a urine sample. The results returned positive for pregnancy. At this time, Dr. Andrew informs her that she is in her third trimester.
So do we think she lied about her most recent period, or do we think that because she was being so unhealthy during this pregnancy that she really was still having, like, monthly bleeding?
You are ahead of the game. We do not know.
Okay.
At this time, third trimester. She's at about 32 weeks, he estimates. And he thinks she should give birth in the next 8 to 10 weeks. At this news, Skylar breaks down into tears and yells, I cannot have a baby. They'll later ask this doctor how many times she yelled it, and he says, I don't know, but at least once. So, she evidently felt that she had time to wait to tell people about this, as she returned to her mother's car and did not tell anyone this news. On May 1st, Kim texts Skylar that she saw an email from the OBGYN that read PTPRENANT and asks Skylar what this means. Skylar replies, no clue. I can call later or something. Her mom says, you should call now. Are you joking? Later? And Skylar says, sorry, just got to school. I'll call now. Skylar tells her mom that it must be a mistake. She says that there is no way that she would be getting smaller if she were pregnant. And if you recall, her shorts are fitting looser.
She says they are.
She says.
That doesn't mean they are.
Right. She reassures her mom that the doctor's office made a mistake, and her mom tells her again that this would ruin her chance at a future, if true. On May 5th.
Maybe not the best time to remind her of that.
Right. But also, Skylar did not seem concerned, like, probably because she already knew. But she's just like, no worries. Like, I'm sure it's a mistake. Couldn't be true. Which I think the more convincing lie would have been, I was just there. They took my urine, and it was negative for pregnancy.
Right.
But, whatever. On May 5th, Skylar and Brandon went to her senior prom. Throughout the night, Skylar was having incredibly painful cramping, so much so that Brandon was concerned that she wasn't having a good time with him. Afterwards, via text, he asked her for reassurance that she enjoyed her night. She does reassure him that she was just cramping all night, but that he was, quote, magic in the way that he made her feel better. Brandon would later testify that he just assumed that the cramping Skylar was experiencing that night were period cramps. Because why wouldn't he? On May 6th, Skylar and Brandon went to a football game with her family and then returned to Skylar's family home. Brandon headed home in time for his 10:30 curfew. Around 1 to 2:30 a.m., Skylar was alone in her room and began experiencing incredibly bad cramps again. She was on her way downstairs to get some Aleve, and it was at this time that she went into her bathroom and gave birth on her toilet, alone. The details of this night are going to be debated later, so I will, for now, tell you what we know to be true. After giving birth, whether this baby was born alive or dead, Skylar took her newborn outside into her backyard, dug a shallow grave, and buried her there. She then placed a flower pot over the top of this spot. The following day, May 7th, Skylar sent a few texts to both Brandon and her mom, Kim. To Brandon, she says that last night she had the worst cramps she's ever had, but that she feels better now and she's at the gym. She texts her mom, quote, "I am speechless with how happy I am. My belly is back. OMG. I'm never, ever, ever letting it get like this again. You're about to see me look better than before. OMG." She also says, quote, "I am literally so excited now just for dinner so I can wear something cute." Her mom responds with a lot of praise, saying that she will look so good at school and that hard work does pay off. On May 17th, so 10 days after, Skylar said to her mom that she feels awesome, that she's so happy and proud. She says that someone asked her how much weight she had lost, and she was so happy to tell them 20 pounds. And she even got to say it in front of the entire class. Her mom says, "I could cry. You are literally my hero." Skylar tells her, "You know what's crazy? When I went to the gyno on April 25th, I was 149 pounds, and today I weighed 119. Her mom replies, "So proud you did this for you, and you're so happy now." Fuck Kim.
Yeah. Like, there are times where I'm like, okay, like when she was like, you're engaging in adult activity, I'm like, it's nice that they can have that conversation, and like her mom is like cool with it, but everything else, I'm like,
Yeah.
honey.
So, Skylar graduates from high school and is headed toward the University of Cincinnati in the fall. But in July, her mom lets her know that she got a call that Skylar was due for her follow-up at the OBGYN about her birth control and that she should schedule that appointment. So on July 12th, Skylar went in for her follow-up appointment at Hilltop Obstetrics, and due to scheduling, was scheduled with a different doctor, Dr. Casey Boyce. Even though Dr. Andrew wasn't available for this visit, when he saw that Skylar would be coming in, he updated Dr. Boyce on her history, as I think is normal. He explained that by this time, based on the gestational age that he had estimated at her visit back in April, that Skylar should have given birth by now. So when she comes in, Dr. Boyce asks her about this at the very start. Skylar begins to cry and stated that she had her baby alone and buried it in her backyard. Dr. Boyce was in shock, but attempted some follow-up questions. Skylar tells her that no one else knows, no one else heard any of this. Skylar then declines a physical exam, and her birth control gets refilled.
Why?
Well, probably a good idea, because after giving birth, you're incredibly fertile, so. After this...
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just refill your prescription. Thank you.
Yeah, so after this
Very
visit...
normal.
Yeah, after the visit, Dr. Boyce meets with Dr. Andrew, and they go meet with legal counsel. They are then instructed to call the police. Later, Lieutenant John Fain meets with Skylar's father, Scott Richardson, outside of their home. He tells Scott that he needs to speak with his daughter, as they think she may have witnessed something. So Scott is like, sounds innocent enough.
Witness what?
The birth of her child. So once Skylar returned home, Scott took her down to the police station to give an interview. Police began questioning Skylar about what she told Dr. Boyce. They asked if she had suspected that she was pregnant at any point, And she says that the only clue she had really was her size and weight gain, because she had always had irregular periods. So when she didn't get one for months, she wasn't immediately alarmed. She admits that she did not want to tell her parents about her suspicions, or once she got that positive pregnancy test, as she knew that they would be mad.
Because they told her that they would be mad.
Right. Her mom constantly reminded her how big of a disappointment that would be. She says that the baby, quote, just came out when she pushed. According to this interview, she caught the baby by the head as it started to fall into the toilet. She claims that she never heard a sound. She held the baby and did not feel a heartbeat or breathing. When asked whether or not she cut the umbilical cord, as the baby should have been attached by this, she says that she does not remember the umbilical cord and she did not cut it. She passed her placenta the next day, and she does acknowledge that that she was bleeding a lot. Because that's what happens.
Where did the umbilical cord go?
Also debated. Skylar then wrapped her baby in a towel and went out into her backyard in the dead of night and buried her. Skylar asks investigators, will I be in trouble for that? She used a small gardening shovel to dig a shallow grave and placed the baby in there. Skylar does not have memory of much of these events. That's up to you to decide if she does or does not. But she says she does not. She tells investigators that she may have looked up ways to not give birth without going to a doctor for an abortion, that she never would have thought about abortion. But she isn't sure. She also may have Googled how to get rid of a baby. But when they asked her where she would have made these searches, Skylar isn't sure, but she assumes that it would have been on her phone. I will say, this is them asking, did you look up ways to get rid of this baby? Would we find that anywhere? And she's like, maybe. Like, I might have, you know?
Yeah.
Her parents then come in to meet with her privately, but the interrogation room is obviously still being recorded. They are heard telling Skylar, you should have told us. Her mom says, you're going to go to jail. You could have had a perfect life. You lied to me about so much. You're going to lose Brandon over this. I think the least of her worries right now.
Right.
Skylar just continues sobbing and apologizing to her parents. Kim tells her, Skylar, you are not coming home with us. At this point, Scott is pleading with Kim to stop this, to stop saying these things. Kim asks Skylar, how do you think I feel?
I don't really care right now.
What in the fuck? Kim? Like, not a lick of concern that, like, your daughter gave birth.
Yeah.
By herself.
Right.
And then the next day was in the gym? And has been ever since? Okay. After 5 hours, the family is able to leave. The family goes back to their home with the police, and Skylar shows them where to find the baby's remains. The crime scene folks said that they could smell decomposition. Dr. Susan Brown, assistant Warren County coroner, noted 3 skull fractures, but is unable to determine if these are pre- or post-mortem. As we know, babies have fragile skulls, so I think that is like a fair thing to say, that we do not know. There was also a large pot placed over a very shallow grave immediately after this burial. So, forensic anthropologist Dr. Elizabeth Murray analyzed the remains on July 20th and found that the bones showed some darkening, which she said could have indicated that their remains had been burned. There was a fire pit in the backyard, but there was no immediate evidence of remains being burned there. 6 days later, Lieutenant Fain and Detective Carter bring Skylar back for a second interview, and I'm going to play a little bit of that.
They know now from a medically scientific certainty, they know there were other things that happened. So I want to know if you... tell us, more of the truth about what happened, because we know there was a lot more.
We just want to put her to rest. We want her, and here's the thing, listen to me. I know that this is a terrible situation, okay? Just listen to me, okay? You were not the only 18-year-old girl who's been in this situation, that it was too late to have an abortion, and your entire life is about to be fucked, okay? So just breathe. But the important thing that matters is not me, not you, not him. What matters is her, okay? I think that you want to give her a proper burial, and you want to give her a proper final resting situation, but in order to do that, we need to know everything, okay? You cannot go back and change anything that you did, but we can have it out there, and we can just say it, okay? If you need to close your eyes to say it, if you need to whatever, but it's very important that you tell us everything that happened, because the doctors already know, okay? They've already shared with us what happened. Now there's things we don't know, like why, or kind of what you were thinking, or what would push someone to feel like this was the only option, that they. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what happened when you decided that you were before you buried her. Okay. So all of those things we need to know. Okay. They're going to be able to tell us medically what happened. So it's really important because I want to know why. I want to know, did you feel like that was your only option? Did you feel like you had no choice? So those are some things that we know, okay? We obviously know she was buried because we found her. And then there's things that they can tell from the tissue and stuff that's left, okay? So we know that some more things happened. I think you were trying to I don't know, maybe minimize what was there, make it easier. I don't know, but there were some other things that happened before she was put in the ground. So let's talk about that, okay?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I really just wanted people to get to hear the way that the questions are being asked, because that will be heavily debated in the case.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of reassurance within the questions that and I think that we talked about at the start of the episode, I think there is something to be said about the way that her mother was speaking to her,
right,
about if this were to happen, that could have affected her choices, and being a teenager, how detrimental that could be. And I also think that in theory it seems like maybe not such a big deal, because for her nobody knew,
right,
except for her. Obviously some people did know, and that's how we ended up here. But I think that I think that is really the mindset she was in. And so for them to be reassuring her this happen, teenage girls feel this way all the time that they get pregnant. I totally understand why you thought you had to do this, and I'm not saying that you necessarily did something wrong. I just want to know what you were thinking.
right.
And I think that that can be really tricky for a teenager to navigate, who has already been through something traumatic and has already justified her actions in her head because of that trauma, and because of the opinions of people who are essentially in charge of her right now.
Right. And I think so that stood out to me when I first watched it, that to me they seem so kind. And in the first interview too, the first interview more so, but they're just saying to her I had a wife who had a baby and she was in a lot of pain and there was a lot of blood, and so was this scary for you? And I think this detective is yes, saying this is hard as an 18-year-old and this would be scary. So and she even freaks out and is what do you think I did? And she's saying no, just choosing to bury her, what decision, why did you do that? I will say that there are parts of this interview that are also perceived as quite leading. While they are very gentle and kind with her, they are also providing her with verbiage that she will use later, which I think, even if they're correct in their findings,
Right.
invalidates a little bit the things that she says, because
Yeah.
she could just
I
be
think
repeating you.
there can be manipulation in kindness, especially with someone who is in a fragile state of mind. And I'm not saying that, like, there's nothing wrong with what she did. I'm just saying, like, clearly there was something going on that made her think to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so to manipulate her in a way that, for her, reaffirms what she did, but, like, knowing that the way the police were viewing it was like, we're gonna get our answers.
Right.
I think that's like a slippery slope.
Yeah.
For what she's going to say,
Right.
especially to get out of the situation.
Right.
Like, we've seen, like, people will say things that didn't happen to get out of the situation. So if they're, like, making her feel like some things she may have done were okay and understandable,
right,
then, like, it might change how she's willing to answer the question.
Yeah, and I also, that is kind of how interrogations work, right? Like, the manipulation, they have to make you feel comfortable, whatever.
Yeah.
But again, as we'll see in the defense in this case, it is a little hard after that to, it's really easy to say, well, she didn't admit it on her own because you said the word. So,
right.
In this interview, Skylar says a few important things. She says that the baby's cord was wrapped around her neck. So that's where she said, like, that would be why the umbilical cord didn't need to be detached. It was, like, already caught up. Which, again, is a little confusing because they're saying, like, oh, that's why you didn't see the umbilical cord. And she's like, oh, yeah, maybe. But it is possible that, like, the umbilical cord had done something strange and this contributed to what Skylar says was a stillbirth. She says that the baby may have gurgled or been breathing for a little bit. Again, Lieutenant Fain says to her, did you hear a gurgling sound? And then shortly after, she says, there may have been a gurgle. Which doesn't, to me, sound like a word you would just, like, use on your own. But, I mean, that's not to say that there wasn't a sound similar to that and she just liked the word that Lieutenant Fain used. But when asked if it is possible that she may have squeezed the baby a little too hard, she said, maybe. Then Detective Carter says to her, look, nothing is going to change what has already happened. They can already tell physically some things about this situation. The doctors already know. So, tell me about the fire. To which Skylar is confused. At least seemingly. She declines there being any fire or burning her baby or attempting to burn her baby. She denies this in total 17 times. They tell her, we know about the charring, and we know that you want to give her a proper burial. We can't give you the remains back until you tell us everything. So at this point, she tells them, I named the baby Annabelle. And then she changes her story to tell them she thought she could cremate her with a lighter. When they ask her questions about the specifics of the burning, she says maybe about if the fire went up to the baby's chest. With more questions, she concedes that her baby could have been alive for even up to 5 minutes. And she then asks them, am I going to jail? So before I move forward, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think that given, first of all, that there was clearly, like, no prenatal care happening, and secondly, that she was clearly, like, participating in disordered eating, I think it's definitely possible that this could impact the health of a baby. I also think that being born in a toilet could impact the health of a baby. And so I think that there is like a possibility that the baby was a stillborn, or that the baby died shortly after
Right.
birth, and that in her mind, like, she's the only one who knows about this. Like, no, her parents don't know. She can't tell anybody. Like, what are we gonna do to make this go away? Like, I can see that being a very real possibility. I can also see the baby being born alive and Skylar having this image in her head of all these things her mother has been saying to her, especially recently, about her appearance, about the consequences of pregnancy, about her future, that, again, nobody knows about this. Let's just make it go away. So I can see it being either of those things. I think that there are a lot of things she said that, like, simply don't add up. But I do also think that there was, like, a little bit of manipulation in, like, her interviewing, and that if all she can say is maybe to things that you should know a definitive answer to, like, if you have Googled something in
Right.
like something that serious, like, there's things that, like, maybe I've Googled, I don't know, but if I Googled how to get rid of a baby,
And then you followed the instructions that you found on Google.
right, I would remember that. And so, like, for every single thing to be a maybe, I think, again, like, it could go either way. It could be because she just wants to say what they are asking her and get out of there. It could be because she doesn't want to fully admit to it. I don't know. I also think that, like we said, like, kindness can be manipulative. Like, have you ever, like, had somebody, like, gotten in trouble for something, and the way you apologize is, like, so over the top to make them feel bad? Yeah. So, like, I think that they're just, like, I don't know, I think that there's a lot of, like, coaxing, trying to get certain things out of her, for sure. I don't think that that necessarily means that she is just making it all up and that she actually didn't really hurt the baby. I think it's very possible that she did. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part for me, is normally when a story doesn't add up, it, like, leads to guilty, right? Like, oh, they can't get their shit together, like, they must be lying. But in this situation, it almost feels like her story doesn't add up because the investigators won't take her in. You know what I mean? Like, she's trying to fit what they just said. Like, tell us about the fire. So she's like, fuck, like, I got, after she says no 17 times, she's like, they're not gonna let me go till I tell them something about a fire.
I also think that, like, even the way that she did, like, finally admit to the fire, saying she thought she could cremate the baby with a lighter, like, a lighter isn't going to burn all the way through the skin and create darkening on several pieces of bone.
Especially if you say, like, you tried.
Right. And so, like, I think that at that point, like, an investigator should be like, okay, she doesn't fucking know what we're talking about. Like, that there must be some other explanation for the darkening.
Or then push her more, but to just, like, accept that as the answer.
Okay.
Like, you didn't even want to say there's a fire pit. Nothing would.
Right. They were clearly thinking it was the fire pit.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I still don't really understand, like, the umbilical cord thing. Like, even if it, like, it happens that there are babies born with umbilical cords wrapped around their neck,
right,
and they are still attached to the mother.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, if any, part of that is true. I also don't know what, if any, she does remember, right? Like, childbirth is trauma, period, always.
Right.
But especially in this situation,
Right.
So, like, you might not remember that, and you might be like, how did I get her detached from that umbilical cord?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I also don't think she was breathing, so, like, put two and two together, the umbilical cord must have been stopping her breathing. Like, you know, she could have just been, like, trying to make sense of it herself.
For sure.
So I don't know about that. But, so, next, Detective Carter tells Skylar that baby Annabelle would be proud. That now... that now they will be able to process Annabelle's remains and give them to the family. At this point, Detective Carter and Lieutenant Fane tell Skylar she's going to jail, and they place her under arrest.
Your baby would be so proud you were under arrest.
Mm-hmm. They do allow Skylar to have a moment with her parents, and she immediately tells them, I tried to cremate the baby just a little.
Girl.
It was said in one of my sources that investigators said to Skylar that there was evidence the baby was born alive. I have yet to find that evidence, and it is believed by the defense and some people that there was no evidence of this, and this is just a tactic for the interrogation.
Yeah.
Upon a search of the Richardson home, investigators found Skylar's laptop under her bed, which was taken in for evidence. They also found an area with a brownish tint that appeared to have been scrubbed. Blue Star, which we talked about in the Gannon Stout case, works like luminol, and it found evidence of a large concentration of blood. Deputy Smith, who conducted this testing, said that he...
In her bedroom?
Yeah, under her bed.
Okay.
Deputy Smith, who conducted this testing, said that he could see the outline of a small torso in this bloodstain. Blue Star also illuminated in the hallway and the bathroom. Based on your face, I'm going to go ahead and give this theory that I wasn't going to give until the end. So, even if she murdered this baby, I don't think she did it in a way that involved blood loss from the baby.
Hiding her under her bed.
But, I will say, she would have been bleeding a lot. And if from the bathroom down the hallway to her room, there's a lot of blood, she could have sat on the floor, and she probably still had this baby. The baby could have been laid in the pile of blood, made a torso outline, but it's her blood. There is only one source I found that says this, so I don't know this for a fact, but there was...
I was actually going to say that.
That's just a Katie theory, but...
Okay.
Well, and a Mary theory, I guess, but... There was one source that said the bed seemed to have been moved from its normal placement when they searched the house. So, obviously, she can't sit under her own bed if it's there. But if the bed was moved...
She's getting pretty small.
Yeah, that's true, too. Maybe she was laying under the bed. I don't know. But I think even if she murdered this baby, she did not... I don't mean to be graphic, but she didn't bludgeon it to death. It's a newborn. Like, it would be pretty simple to do so without much violence.
I agree. Especially because it sounds like the most blood was in the bedroom.
Right.
And, like, the idea is, like, the baby was born in a toilet. It was wrapped in a towel, which typically come from a bathroom.
Yep. And
then buried in the backyard. It sounds like the baby didn't venture much into the house,
right? Which we don't really know.
I don't know if I believe the torso thing. Like, that seemed, I don't know, that seems far-fetched. But I'm not a professional.
Yeah.
But that was my first thought. I feel like it probably is her blood, and even like we talked about in the Gannon Stout case, if there was enough blood coming out of her, it's also possible that she was on her bed. Bleeding, and it all came down to the floor.
Right. Which I would assume they would have found on her mattress, but...
Yeah, and that's like a lot for somebody who's still alive.
Right.
But, I mean, I think that I feel like it probably is not the baby's blood.
Yes, but I do think there is a strong possibility that she just didn't include a trip back to the bedroom in the story. But I do think...
She also might not remember one.
Probably she did not go straight from the bathroom, just still bleeding profusely, straight down to the backyard. She probably did go settle herself in her bedroom, maybe change clothes, And in that time, she would have had to set down this, alive or dead, this baby. Mm-hmm. And so I think, and they're not saying it's the baby's blood, but I feel like that's what they're implying.
Yeah.
But I think the obvious thought here is that someone just gave birth with zero medical care, that is 18 years old and incredibly small. She's gonna be bleeding a lot.
I also think, though, that I can see where they're maybe thinking it's the baby's blood in relation to the skull fractures.
Right.
Like, maybe they are thinking she did bludgeon this baby to death. That's why her skull is fractured, and that's why there's blood on all over the house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the most likely scenario in my mind, but sure. On August 4th, Skylar Richardson was facing 5 charges: aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, the endangering of a child, tampering with evidence, and the gross abuse of a corpse, which you mentioned earlier in a different case. The prosecutors laid out as the motive that Skylar and her family were obsessed with appearances and the perception of the outside world. She was eventually released after paying her $50,000 bond and was released onto house arrest. On August 17th, Dr. Murray decides to make this all interesting, and she finalized her autopsy opinion. In this, she states that there is no evidence of thermal injury or burning. She sent an email to Dr. Susan Brown saying, listen, you saw the bones that I saw in July, and you saw them again in August. Wouldn't you agree that they look dramatically different than in July? And I think Dr. Brown agrees with this. I don't know what the reasoning for that is. I don't know the science of the darkening and how it would change, but I would assume that if bones are burnt a month later, they do not suddenly look not burnt. But I don't know. I'm not a medical person. She says to Dr. Susan Brown, I know the prosecutors are upset with me now. She said, I was not made aware that the burning was going to be such an important piece of this case. But anyway, I can't make up evidence that isn't there. In 2018, a few days before the trial was set to begin in April, it was delayed for an investigation into allegations made against Lieutenant John Fain. He was found to be having an affair. He was married, and this woman was married. Lieutenant Fain and this woman have both denied that they ever had sex. However, she and Fain met up over 20 times throughout 2017. They would meet at a church, drive over to his home, and spend an hour or more together. All of this occurred while Lieutenant Fain was on duty, on the clock. Warren County initially demoted him, but then they worked a deal out with him, and he agreed to retire. There was, again, I got mixed sources on this, but there was one source that said this woman was the cousin of a state witness in a case that Lieutenant Fain was a part of. Other sources just say a woman. So, either way, shitty. And you're on the job, dude.
Yeah.
Clock out for that.
Yeah, I don't really care if you have an affair. Just don't have it when you're supposed to be working.
Yeah. People probably dying on your watch, dude. More delays would occur with the defense appealing evidence. Their appeals to withhold medical records from the obstetrician's office, to change the venue, and to have the grand jury indictment reversed due to the new autopsy opinion were all denied. The trial would not begin until September 3rd, 2019. Skylar Richardson's defense, including Charlie Rickers, said that she buried her baby in a grave, which could be seen from her window, and placed flowers on top. This is an effort to show the jury that this was tragic and difficult for Skylar, and that she wanted to be able to, look upon the grave of her baby. I think the prosecution would say she put the flowers on top so that you didn't see it, and the defense would say it was like an homage, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
An important piece of the defense's strategy was to disprove the burning. They state that it is impossible to touch a lighter to a baby's skin and have fire go up to its chest, which is true. Babies are like fucking 75% water or something, but also, I'm not trying to tell somebody to do some not safe things, but if you put a lighter to your own skin, you will not catch on fire.
Right.
I feel like I'm having Gannon Stout flashbacks. You
When
don't...
you see, I'm thinking about, like, one of the scenes in The Greatest Showman where he, like, comes out of the burning building and he looks like he's on fire.
Mhm.
When you see something like that, the person themselves is not on fire.
Right.
It's, like, their clothes.
Or their hair.
And their hair. Like,
Right.
it's not their skin.
Mhm.
Like, skin doesn't catch on fire.
Yeah. And she's just, like, indicating she, like, put the lighter to this baby's toe, and it just caught up in flames to the chest. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. There were also no...
You're a police officer, you should know that.
Right. There were also no signs of accelerant present on the remains or at the scene. That would have changed this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accelerant would help a flesh to catch on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Although the autopsy results did find that the cause of death was homicidal violence with undetermined etiology, which just means that the exact method of homicide is undetermined, the defense will push back on this, with Dr. Brown admitting that Skylar's statements and confessions were relevant to her findings, meaning she would not or could not have determined that this was a homicide with just the physical evidence. She took Skylar's statements into account, saying, this girl said she burned her baby, so that sounds like homicide to me. Which is a problem for the prosecution. Additionally, they talk extensively about the interrogation techniques of the investigators, saying that Skylar only said that the baby gurgled after Lieutenant Fain used that word. The defense will call a witness. This part's super interesting. The defense calls a witness to tell the courtroom about the Reed technique, which includes, it's an interrogation technique that includes the use of confrontation and minimization. So they claim that the investigators, starting the second interview off by telling Skylar that they already know the truth, tell me about the fire, it's all going to come out anyway. This is an example of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
Then when Skylar repeatedly asks if she will be in trouble, and they either downplay this or outright deny that she will be in trouble, telling her, we just want to get Anmo's remains back to you. This is an example of minimization.
Mm-hmm.
The defense also has a psychologist, Dr. Stuart Bassman, testified that Skylar could have had a predisposed disorder that causes her to submit to authority. I think you made the rest of that argument look ridiculous, sir.
It's called being 18 years old.
Yeah.
That's a disorder.
And having probably a narcissist for a mother.
Yeah.
The
At least a very vain mother.
Yes. The Reed technique is criticized for its likelihood to lead to false confessions. This is the technique used by investigators in the notorious Central Park 5 case.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's the case I was thinking of when I was saying, like, they're trying, like, you're going to say anything to get out of there.
Yeah.
They're like, we just want to know.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's what kids do.
Mm-hmm. Because kids are, and I guess it's a disorder now, but kids are taught to trust and submit to adults and authority figures.
Right.
And, like, I think that we're in a day and age where we're coming out of that and, like, letting kids know not every adult in a position of power is a good person. And, like, you need to, like, hold your ground and do what's best for you. But I think that for the most part, as kids, we are taught, like, you listen and do what is asked of you by your parents and your adult family members and your teachers and especially law enforcement officials.
Yeah, and I also think, like, this, again, if we're assuming she did not kill her baby, just for this argument, she is still incredibly confused. She's still incredibly traumatized, confused, was in a daze. She probably did not have enough calories to perform what is a physical act of giving birth to a baby. And so I think that when you say to her, we have evidence that your baby was born alive, she probably believes you and is like, shit, I did not know that. Or when you say, like, we're looking at her body and we're seeing this, she's probably like, what did I do in my delusional state? Yeah. Or even, okay, like, I guess that's what happens with like, you know, like, she's just thinking she was wrong. So she's like, I guess I'll just say this, you know?
Yeah, in the case you, like, briefly mentioned from New Mexico, I saw, like, a clip where the girl was being interviewed by a doctor at the hospital, and basically, like, what had happened was she was there for stomach pains. She has to go to the bathroom. She was in the bathroom for, like, 30 minutes. She came out. Cleaning staff went in to, like, I think just do normal, like, take the trash out.
They said there was blood.
And there was blood all over the bathroom. And when they looked in the trash can, there was a baby. So they tell her that, like, we know you dropped this baby in the trash can. And she says kind of the same thing, like, when the baby came out, there was no crying. I really did not think the baby was alive. And the doctor says something that, like, something that indicated that the baby was alive. And the girl, she, like, and again, like, this girl just put a baby in the trash can. She might not be the most empathetic person in the world, so it may not have been genuine, but she kind of, like, screams and is like, it was alive. Like, she was like, seemed like shocked by that. She was like, I really did not hear any crying. I did not see any movement. I really did not think the baby was alive. And so I think that, again, this is a traumatic experience for anyone, but especially when you're alone and I've been a teenager, and even at 18, 19, you feel like you're a child.
Yeah.
And so, like, to be alone, to be a child, and to be dealing with something like that big and having to kind of figure out a way out of it, it is very possible that you either block certain things out and make the situation better in your head.
Right.
Or that you genuinely misunderstood what was happening.
Right.
And were too caught up in trying to figure out the situation to really think about, like, if that baby is crying or whatever. And so I think that, like, like you said, it's very possible that she really didn't know or remember what the details were, and that she's hearing them and she's like, oh my god, like, I didn't know, I didn't realize that, and is just believing them and going against what she originally believed to be true, which I think is already going to be fuzzy enough.
Right. I also think, like, in movies, right, if the baby doesn't cry, like, whatever, but
it's a big deal.
In real life, babies take a minute to cry. And a doctor, if you were in a hospital or wherever you are with doulas or whatever person is an expert in this, they would be able to work with that baby, tell you how long, okay, this is how long till it's worrisome that they're not crying. Like, it is possible that at 18, having never seen a childbirth or researched a childbirth or been prepared throughout your pregnancy by prenatal care, like, you wouldn't know. It might take a second for the baby, or they might come out looking white, or they might, you know, like, these things might happen. They might even take a minute for you to feel a heartbeat. Like, that could be normal, or at least fixable if you were in a proper setting with proper care. And so it is possible that these girls thought that.
Yeah. I think that makes sense for the umbilical cord thing too, because again, if your only experience with seeing births is a movie where the baby comes out and they're like, oh my god, it's not crying, this is the end of the world. You also see the baby come out and they immediately place it in a bed.
They don't cut nothing.
Everything's done. Like, I'm gonna be stuck on the umbilical cord thing for a while, because, like, it had to have gone somewhere.
Yeah.
It had to have come out somehow. And so, like, but if you don't know that that's something that's supposed to be happening, like, I mean, I don't know what an umbilical cord feels like.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of the scene in The Office where they asked Dwight about his favorite birthday, and he starts trying to tell the story, like, that he remembers his birth, and he's like, mother cuts the cord with her teeth. Like, I don't know how tough an umbilical cord is, so, like, I don't know if you can just kind of,
Rip it.
like, tug on it. I don't know. Like, I don't know. And but I can't imagine that she did go get, like, scissors and, like, bring them, unless maybe that's what she was doing on the floor in her bedroom.
Well, but you think, like, that you would remember.
That would be a core memory.
Right.
Yeah, and so, like, I don't know, but I think that, again, like, all of these things that adult people are asking her about that to us seem like normal questions, like, what happened to the umbilical cord? Like, why didn't you wait to see if the baby cried? How did you check their heartbeat? Like, an 18-year-old who is thinking that this would never happen to her has not considered those things before and doesn't know to expect them.
Yeah. Another critique of the investigation comes in the line of questioning to Lieutenant Fain, who then admits that he was not aware that Blue Star, that luminol-like testing, could illuminate for household cleaners as well as blood. I will say, a large spot of household cleaners under your bed with the shape of a torso would still be suspicious. I would still say, if I were a cop and when you walk in you smell bleach, you note that, right? A lot of cleaning supplies. So if you said that's a bunch of household cleaners, I would still say, why?
Under the bed?
Right. So, okay, you got him.
Cleaning.
You got him there that he's an idiot because he didn't know that about Blue Star. I will say it doesn't change the situation for me. There were also digital forensics experts who said that there were no searches on any of Skylar's devices for getting rid of a baby or anything of the like. Throughout the trial, the prosecution will continue to state that Skylar and her family are obsessed with outward appearances. However, the defense will bring in discussions of Skylar's history with an eating disorder. Her parents say that she has been having problems with her eating since the age of 12. Her dad said he began to notice it when she was around 13. She was hiding food in her room. She was increasingly concerned with her caloric intake, and her weight was fluctuating substantially. Her mom reports that she would even refuse to get gum that had 5 calories in it. She then entered a binging, purging, starving cycle. Kim and Scott say that they attempted nutritionists and child therapists to help her. And then she went into formal treatment in the 8th grade, and she was diagnosed with body dysmorphia. Scott claims that he was unaware of any sort of cheering on or encouraging of weight loss from Kim to Skylar. Her mom says that during her senior year and leading up to her prom, they were actually pleased with Skylar's weight gain, feeling that she looked healthy. To which I say,
that's all you said to her.
So are the texts just I know that Skylar's struggling with this, so I want to encourage her, but I think she looks great? Or are you lying to cover your ass? Because you would think if you know your daughter is diagnosed with eating disorders and body dysmorphia, that you are not going to appease her. You are going to say no, stop going to the gym and burning 300 calories and not eating. We're going to, you would at least acknowledge that you don't want her back in that cycle. You would not say you're my hero.
Yeah, it's not like she has Alzheimer's where it's better to go along with the train of thought that she's having.
This is not 50 First Dates.
Yeah.
No. At the time of the trial, I will note, Skylar's mom says that her weight was down to 90 pounds. Mm-hmm. The defense brings in Dr. Andrew to testify. They tell him, clearly you estimated the gestational age wrong. You thought 32 weeks. Told her it would be 8 to 10 weeks before she gave birth. It was 10 days. He says Yes, it would have been actually somewhere between 37 and 39 weeks. The doctor does say, had he known the correct number, it would have been cause for concern, as she would have been measuring quite small. Clearly, she was measuring for 32 weeks. She was not 32 weeks. So, they ask him if this measuring significantly smaller could lead to a stillbirth, to which he says, yes, sure. Due to her eating disorder history, the defense also attempts to show the effects that malnutrition could have had on her pregnancy. They mention that when she came into the OBGYN, she had reported a recent period. Also reportedly, Skylar only gained 15 pounds throughout her pregnancy, so it is possible that her eating disorder greatly restricted the baby's growth. So, flashback to what you asked earlier, which we still don't know the answer to, was she actually bleeding a month prior to this OBGYN appointment, which would indicate a problem if you're having third trimester bleeding, or was this a lie? But I think if it's a lie, then you have to assume that she strongly suspected she was pregnant, or else why else would she lie?
Why would she need to lie?
Right. Because she says, I just thought irregular periods were weird for me. So, in my opinion, I don't know, actually, because if it's a lie, then, like, whoa, this is a whole different story. But, like, I think it's very possible that she was bleeding. If you've only gained 15 pounds 37 weeks into a pregnancy, I don't think there's any surprise that there would be a lot of complications.
Yeah. I also, like, am curious if this was her first gynecological appointment. And I don't think that her and her mom were hiding that it was her first gynecological appointment. Then, and this doctor is like, you're pretty pregnant. Why is there not, like, was there an attempt to schedule follow-up appointments, to schedule
birth,
a birth appointment? Like, I know that, like, that doesn't always work, but, like, there are, like, you do generally have an idea of, like, when you will be coming in to give birth. You know what doctor you'll be giving birth with, what hospital you'll be staying at. Like, was there an attempt to make those things and she just, like, declined all of them?
Yeah.
When the letter came that her mom was like, you need to call them back, was that an attempt? Like, it just, I don't know, like, it feels like there should have been more assistance to her to facilitate this birth.
Yeah, and I do think, obviously we don't know how hard he fought and said, like, please set up an appointment with me. And she also may have said, like, look, you said I have 8 to 10 weeks. I'm going to go tell my mom this eventually, and then I'll figure out with her what we're going to do when we'll come back. The thing about the July appointment is that, like, in April, they did give her birth control. Like, they did give her the prescription that she came for. So then in July, I think it was a true follow-up for, like, hey, you've been on this birth control for, like, 3 months. We want to see how you're doing with it. Like, because if it was a follow-up for the birth, I would assume they would have done it sooner. Although maybe not if they thought 8 to 10 weeks. So I don't know.
Why are you giving a pregnant person birth control?
I don't know. And then I also think, like, yeah, did he give it to her and say, like, now don't take this while you're pregnant? We don't know any of that, right? Like, we don't know.
Yeah. Maybe she did take it and that could have contributed to the story.
Right. And I also think, what was I going to say? Oh, I also, see, that's also weird to me because in this email that they sent her, they clearly said patient pregnant.
My mom's like, what's that mean?
What does that mean? And so that is weird too, that you're sending out basically a report that's like, you're pregnant and also here's your birth control. Like,
yeah, that's
weird.
Not.
Yeah. So I don't know if maybe they just gave it to her and said, like, well, once you give birth, you're going to want to immediately start this, so you can just have it. Or maybe she even said, like, I'm not ready to tell my mom yet, so can you send me with this prescription so that it looks like I came in here for what I came in here for? Like, she's 18 at this point, I think. So it's like, I mean, I guess.
I think that also feeds into, like, some of her confusion.
Right.
About things, like...
No one straight up said to her, like,
right.
if
I'm not giving you this.
Right. No one said, like, you are going to give birth and you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. You need to gain weight.
Right.
You need to, you know, like, no one said any of that to her.
Yeah. Instead of a prescription for birth control, here's one for prenatal vitamins.
Right. Some more nutritional meals, please.
Yeah.
So, once the arguments concluded, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned to read the verdicts, Skylar was incredibly emotional. She was found not guilty of aggravated murder, not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, not guilty of endangering a child, but guilty of gross abuse of a corpse, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
She was booked into jail until sentencing, and she was sentenced to 3 years of probation. She was also sentenced to 7 days of jail time, but she had already served them. So, Judge Donald Oda said to her at her sentencing hearing, quote, "I know in my heart that if you had made different choices, Annabelle would still be here today." End quote. Which I think also fair. After the trial, baby Annabelle's remains were given back to the Richardsons. And I just want to end on some Kim. In an episode of the First 48, Kim says, quote, "I was a grandmother, but I never got any of the benefits." She says that this became so big it was like the Super Bowl. And then she says that during the investigation, her Facebook reached hate book level for her.
What are the benefits? Being a grandparent.
That you missed out on.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like having a grandkid? Like, you can still probably do that.
You were so adamant that your daughter not be a teenage mother, and now you're bummed that you didn't get to take care of her baby?
It sounds like you did not think there would be any benefits. Kim, the villain, obviously. Like,
yeah.
It was like the Super Bowl. Your daughter was under investigation for aggravated murder, and it was like the Super Bowl
of this grandchild that you so desperately wanted and missed out on.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah.
Facebook became hate book for me. Okay.
I wonder why, Kim.
Yeah. You're crazy. Oh, I hate Kim.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before my sources?
No, I think like you said, all of those things are fair. I think, and like, again, I don't know exactly what happened. I think that the way our justice system works, you could not prove without a shadow of a doubt that baby was born alive and then murdered. Obviously, she did abuse the corpse, and I do agree that had she made different choices, even while she was pregnant,
right,
this would have ended differently. So, like, I do think that, again, we don't know how much she suspected she was pregnant, but I do think that, like, not only in how she handled the birth and disposing of the baby, but in the way she handled finding out and she was pregnant and moving forward with the pregnancy, there was some fault. However, I also do think that she was an 18-year-old with a very fragile mindset for very different reasons, and that it genuinely seems like no adults were looking out for her in this pregnancy or just in life. Like, I really, honestly, this is my final thought. I'll save it until then because I have something else to say. But I think that the way that her mother was speaking to her was not healthy for her. And I think that the way that the doctors handled diagnosing her pregnancy was gross misconduct.
Lackluster at best.
And my final thought is I hope that Scott served Kim with some divorce papers.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't decide. I don't know enough about Scott. I don't know if he's a villain too, but yeah.
I like the idea that like she's saying all of this and he's like when he's like stop. Like what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. If you have time and you want to watch that whole interview or find the part where they come in, you can hear him. And it's like whatever. Yeah. So my thoughts are that I think that the prosecution does not have enough. I do not think I could have convicted this girl of aggravated murder. I think I would have made the exact same choice. I think I would have said obvious gross abuse of a corpse. Beyond that, I don't have enough, right?
I agree.
I think there is a part of me that still feels that it is a little bit convenient that for a birth that you did not tell anyone about, or a pregnancy you did not tell anyone about, that you clearly did not want, I know this is not the word that I should use, but like that would have been very, for lack of a better word, lucky that you never had to deal, you know, like if that's just how it happened. To me, that seems very convenient. I will say with the caveat that she still thought she had 6 to 8 more weeks. So she may not have been, we say like, well, she wasn't ever going to tell anyone, so that's convenient. But then it's also like, she may have still planned to tell people. She may have thought, like, I just want to get through my prom, dude. I want to get through this, and then I'll tell them, and we'll plan a birth and whatever. And it never got to that point. And so it is possible that she gave birth, this baby wasn't breathing, and she was like, okay, I got to handle this because no one even knows about it. And then, yes, her text to her mom the next morning that she's so thrilled. That is real, true body dysmorphia. That is, she's ill. Like, the fact that she just went through this and is like, thank God I got my body back.
Yeah.
That could, sure, she could be an asshole.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah, she could be an asshole, I guess. But to me, given the history we know, like, long before she was ever pregnant, like, this is truly how she views her body.
Yeah. I also think, like, the juxtaposition of what she texted Brandon and what she texted her mom really show the difference in the type of relationship that she had with each of them and the type of care that they had for her, that she was telling him how badly she felt, like, physically, and that she was telling her mom how wonderful she looked physically, because like that's what each of them would care about. And I think, like, I don't know, I agree. At first when you read that, I was like, that's like fucked. But also, like, yeah, is it fucked because she doesn't care, or is it fucked because that's where her mind is at? Yeah
I think this one's hard. It was not as hard. It was much harder than I thought.
For sure.
I thought this was going to be very cut and dry, but...
Yeah.
All right. My sources were Court Junkie episodes, a First 48 episode, and then some local news sources, WCPO and Cincinnati News. So, that's all.
Good job.
And Mary will be giving us another local case next week? Nice. That's all y'all get to know.
Sorry.
It's great.
All right. Bye.
Bye.